usage by Mr. Coughlin after January of 2003.
Okay, so it's possible impeachment? Is that what you're
Possible
saying?
impeachment, yes.
Okay. I'm going to overrule the objection.
And this evidence you speak of, this has been propounded?
No.
Is yet to be propounded? Objection.
That's the nature of impeachment, Your Honor.
Okay. Why don't ask the question, see what the answer is. I'm going to overrule the objection at this point.
What's your question?
Have you had any, I believe I used the word paraphernalia, I'm not sure, at your residence for smoking pot since January of 2003?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Let's go on to the arrest of October 14th, 2001. Page 1, Exhibit 1, page 25. There's a page entitled 11.1 Prior Applications for Admission to Practice Law. Second paragraph. In October of 2001, I was arrested outside a movie theater. I had entered the movie theater without paying. I have no excuse for doing so. I was approached by two ushers at the movie theater and asked to join them in the hallway, whereupon I left the theater. The ushers gave chase, yelling profanities at me. I was perplexed as to why they reacted so and ran. The ushers chased me for nearly 1 mile. I was later told by the movie theater ushers that they were chasing me because I vaguely matched the description of someone who had committed a series of infractions at the theater, and that they took my running as an indication of guilt. After a photograph of my face was shown to the victims of the series of infractions, the victims indicated that I was definitely not the person who committed the infractions. I'm still not clear as to what these infractions entailed. In the middle of the chase, I ran into an area where several police officers on bicycles were standing and was told to stop running. I stopped running as soon as the adrenaline and the fear I felt from being chased by two large men yelling profanities at me would allow. I was charged with 3 misdemeanors: resisting arrest, evading a police officer, and obstructing a police officer. All charges were dropped completely with no conditions whatsoever. I was not ordered to pay any fines or comply with any instructions. Immediately after the arrest, I reported the incident to both my law school's administration and the State Bar of Nevada. Did you write that statement?
I believe so.
Was that statement true?
Every aspect of it, or are you referring to anything in particular?
Every aspect of it.
I believe so.
Why did you run away from the ushers?
I would also object. I know that I've already entered this, but the application, as I read it, wouldn't have even, and this goes to my candor, wouldn't have even required that I report this because it didn't result in a conviction. You know, so here I believe, reporting something more beyond what the application calls for me to report. You know? And yet you're saying I don't have candor, I haven't, you know. So here I am, I'm coming up to you saying, you know, I'm looking at my drinking, I'm reporting something that, an arrest that all charges were dropped that I don't even believe the application calls for.
Your Honor, is this an objection?
What's the question?
The question was, the question had already been answered. My next question was, why did he run away from the ushers? I asked whether or not these statements were true.
Okay. These statements, he indicated that they were true.
Yes.
I'm going to object for relevance.
I'm going to sustain the objection on relevancy. I don't understand why this is relevant, that he was arrested outside a movie theater in 2001. Are you saying that he didn't report it?
Your Honor, I'm saying that,
I don't think he has to report arrest.
well, what I'm stating is that he did report it, and he was not
Honest in
his reporting.
Okay, so you may cross-examine him on that.
Okay. Okay, and isn't it true that the police officers actually yelled for you to stop many times before you stopped?
I don't believe so, but I was running, and this was a high-intensity situation, so...
And in this statement you write, I stopped running as soon as the adrenaline and fear I felt from being chased by two large men yelling profanities at me would allow, correct?
That's correct.
Isn't it true you were actually tackled by one of the police officers?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And it took 4 officers to hold you down, Mr. Coughlin?
I don't believe that's correct, and I don't believe I really needed to be tackled.
But you were tackled, correct?
Correct, and I guess anybody who's ever tackled needed to be tackled, right? I mean...
And when they asked you for your name, you didn't provide a name to the police officers, did you?
That I don't remember.
In fact, they had to find your wallet to get your ID, correct?
I don't remember.
And you wouldn't answer their questions when they asked you questions, Mr. Coughlin?
I'm not sure about that.
Were you under the influence of alcohol at the time of your arrest?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Exhibit 1, page 25, the same exhibit page. It goes on to say, secondly, the State Bar of Nevada informed me that another concern regarding my application arose out of an academic dishonesty investigation that was completely resolved in my favor in December of 2001. Correct?
That's correct.
You made that statement?
I did make that statement.
Is that statement correct?
You tell me where that is again?
It's third paragraph, first line.
I believed that that was correct when I wrote that.
Yet, the investigation actually ended with a formal warning, didn't it?
That's something I'm unclear on.
Really, let's turn to Exhibit 53. Exhibit 53 is a letter dated November 27, 2001, Mr. Zachary Coughlin from Philip Burns, Student Judicial Affairs Officer. And it states, Dear Mr. Coughlin, this letter is in response to our meeting centering around your involvement in an incident that occurred violating UNLV Student Code Section 5, Code 5, Section P and R, Section 5, Student Responsibilities. P, assaulting, striking, threatening, or causing physical harm to another. Okay. So that's the one I'm referring to.
Is that P or R or Q?
P. And
Is it?
states
Why
under
does
number
it say
1.
P and R and then it says P and Q?
Mr. Coughlin, under that section says number 1, you are to consider this a formal letter of warning. If you are found responsible for similar violations of the student code, your status as a student at UNLV will be reconsidered. Correct?
Well, 1 second, I need to review this. It appears that academic dishonesty did not occur. Spoke with several students. Remember seeing you and have the paper in class that day. I don't know, because he's not finding me responsible of anything, so I don't understand. And then it was my understanding that they were alleging some sort of academic dishonesty. I wasn't sure that they were saying that the threatening occurred in that context. I thought they were referring more to the computer thing. But, I don't know. I mean, well, I'm sorry, your question? It's to me, it's like, well, we're finding that you didn't do anything, and if you do that again, then you're in trouble. It's like, what? I don't get it. You know, you didn't do anything, but don't do it again.
Do you agree that the sentence says you are to consider this a formal letter of warning, Mr. Coughlin?
Well, see, I don't know what that's referring to. If that's referring to this moving the computer thing, or in which case, that's in my application, right? I mean, I told you about the computer thing in my application, so I don't know. And then the confusion is further compounded by the fact that he quotes section 5 up here with a P and a Q, but above that he says P and R, and then...
Mr. Coughlin, did you receive this letter?
I believe I did.
And at the bottom of the letter, it states that,
And it says, though I am recommending this case be resolved on an informal basis. So how can it be an informal, formal warning?
Mr. Coughlin, let me finish my question, please.
You know?
Why don't we just proceed by question and answer?
Okay. Though I'm recommending this case be resolved on an informal basis, you have 10 working days after receipt of this informal resolution letter to request in writing that your case be submitted to a formal hearing. Did you ever request in writing that your case be submitted to a formal hearing, Mr. Coughlin?
I don't believe so.
Did you ever question what was in this letter?
I can't remember. It's possible I might have spoken with Mr. Burns about it, but that's quite a while ago.
Okay, going on to back to Exhibit 2, page 2. It's down about 5 sentences. It starts with during. During the course of the academic investigation and some subsequent Nevada Bar inquiry, several students signed affidavits indicating that they had, in fact, seen me turn in this paper. Was that a true statement when you made it?
I believe so. If you'll notice in Mr. Burns' letter of Exhibit 53, it says, I have spoken with classmates from the class in question, that's classmates, and they do remember seeing you have the paper in class that day.
That wasn't the question, Mr. Coughlin.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question was the statement that several students signed affidavits indicating that they had in fact seen me turn the paper in. Was that true?
I'm not sure. I know of at least one student.
Is that Amy Jones?
Yeah.
In fact, that's the only affidavit you ever submitted to the Nevada State Bar, correct?
I'm not sure. That would be something my attorney, who was handling that matter, would know.
So you don't know how many affidavits were actually
I
turned in?
remember arranging for several students to have affidavits signed, but I think there was something, a guy named Mike DeStefano was going to sign one, but I think there was something where my attorney only felt it was necessary to get one signed.
So only one student signed an affidavit, correct?
I'm not sure, but I think that's possible.
So the statement, several students signed affidavits, that's not in fact correct, is it?
I'm not sure. I know Mr. Burns here references talking to several students, though.
He doesn't reference an affidavit, though, does he, Mr. Coughlin?
He doesn't say whether or not affidavits were involved. And given the tone of his letter, which mentions informality several times, and I think that goes to your early question about being formally disciplined, which if this says informal basis and an informal resolution, I don't know how that really fits in with your contention, which I as I understand it, to mean that I somehow didn't alert you to being some sort of formal censure, whereas this is clearly categorizing it as informally telling you, well, we didn't find you guilty of any academic wrongdoing.
Mr. Coughlin,
So, I don't know.
You
I guess
didn't
you can
attach-
twist it around however you want.
You didn't provide
You've shown
exhibit-
yourself extremely willing to twist things around.
Mr. Coughlin,
So,
you didn't provide Exhibit 53 to the State Bar, did you? State Bar of California?
I'm not sure.
In fact, you didn't
Might
provide.
have, or my attorney might have.
You didn't provide any evidence of the emails between you and Professor Trados that's found in Exhibit 5 to the State Bar, did you?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
I'm not sure.
You didn't provide any letters regarding the UNLV investigation into either the computer or the academic dishonesty investigation, correct?
I didn't provide any letters.
You didn't provide any letters or documents regarding that investigation into the computer to the State Bar of California, did you?
Well, in my application, I referenced it, right?
But you didn't provide
And-
any letters regarding that, did you?
In what is it? Exhibit 1, page 13, under scholastic discipline, I stated, I was fined $100 by UNLV for moving a computer monitor and keyboard 10 feet.
Can we take a 5-minute break, Your Honor?
Or,
I still have a lot.
okay, I
Back on the record.
back on the record, and we'll stay until 5?
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Coughlin, what was the basis for the academic dishonesty investigation?
I don't think I'm capable of answering that.
Why not?
That's their place to say what it's for. I'd
What-
be guessing. I was never given a very thorough outline of what they thought happened or what they took issue with.
What happened in that case?
Objection, vagueness.
Sustained.
Okay. Did you take a cyber law class taught by Professor Mark Tratos in the summer of 2001?
Yes.
And as part of that class, was there a paper that was due that was worth 40% of your grade?
I'm not sure. There was conflicting reports over how much it was worth.
Was there a paper due in that class, Mr. Coughlin?
Yes, there was.
Okay. And in fact, it was due July 2001?
Yes, I believe so.
And the instructor, Professor Tratos, gave the instruction that he wanted the paper to be turned in hard copy as well as with a disc, correct?
I'm not sure about that. I've heard conflicting reports on that.
You've heard conflicting reports whether or not Professor Tratos wanted a disc?
Yes.
What was your understanding? Did he want a disc?
I remember in class that day that prior to the start of class, people were unsure of whether he wanted a disc or not. The very fact that there was any uncertainty over whether he wanted a disc or not, I think, would serve to alert you that it's possible and that you'd probably be better off submitting the disc. But it seemed like a good deal of the class wasn't sure whether he wanted a disc or not, and if so, why he wanted a disc.
Did you understand that he wanted a disc, though, Mr. Coughlin?
No, I didn't. And the first I heard of it was before. Actually, I seem to remember him indicating that he wanted a digital copy. Whether that means a disc or not is up to debate. But I remember him saying that he wanted to post the papers on the class's website. in which case he would need a digital copy, I assume.
You didn't turn in a digital copy of your paper, did you, Mr. Coughlin?
No.
You didn't turn in a disc of your paper, did you?
No, I wrote atop my hard copy that I wasn't turning in a disc because I would prefer not to have my work posted on the class's website.
You didn't put your name on your paper either, did you?
I put my social security number on my paper because that had been the practice in every other, it had been blind grading in every other course I took in law school. This particular course was taught by an adjunct who had an employee in the class, and somewhat naively thought, well, we'll still be having blind grading, particularly where there's an employee in the class, and I took care to put my social security number atop the paper and a note saying I wasn't turning in the disc copy because I didn't wish to be put on the class's website.
Before you did that, though, did you get permission from your professor to do so?
I don't believe so. I mean, I wrote it on top of the paper and turned it in on the podium that he taught at, but in terms of did I get explicit permission?
Correct.
Not to turn in
A disc or a digital format.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that I understood that that was a directive in the first place. You know?
You stated, though, that you wrote on your paper you're not turning in a disc,
Right.
correct?
Just in case that was a directive. Like I said, there was some real confusion among
And the question
my peers
was,
in class as to whether or not he in fact did say, yeah, I want a disc, or whether he said, I wanted to put it on the class's website, or I wanted to put it on my laptop because I'm going to Hawaii and I want to grade them on the computer, on the plane.
and the question was, did you ask beforehand whether or not you could be excused from providing a disc?
Objection. It's a leading question that it is supposing that by saying excusing, it's supposing that that was a requirement, which we haven't established that.
Okay, so the objection is a lack of foundation. It's not leading, is it?
Okay, yeah. I guess so.
So what's the question?
The question was, did he, before submitting his paper stating he's not going to provide an online format or a disc, did he get permission?
Okay, and your answer, I'm going to ask you to answer that question.
I didn't know whether or not you needed permission to do that. And
The question was, did you get permission?
You can say yes or no and explain it.
okay. I didn't get permission, and I wasn't aware that one needed to get permission.
At some point, did you find out that Professor Tratos didn't have a copy of your final paper?
No, I never found that out.
Yet he did email you. Let's turn to Exhibit 5, page 8. He did email you, Zach, please send me another copy of your paper. Many thanks, Mark G. Tratos, correct?
And I think that's interesting to say another, because that implies he got one in the first place, which I just don't understand. You know?
And do you...
And in fact, this happened with another student, because there was another student, Jessica Wolf, in this course who he had said something about he doesn't have her paper, he needs another copy of her paper or something. So. But I always found it curious that he would write, I need another copy of your paper.
Did you provide another copy of your paper, Mr. Coughlin?
I provided a rough draft of my paper.
No. Did you ever provide a final draft of the same paper that you turned in July of 2001?
Subsequent to turning it in, I don't think I had a copy of it. So, no. I turned it in when it was due.
Why didn't you turn in the final copy? Why didn't you give him a copy of the final draft that you turned in July of 2001?
I couldn't find it.
And at some point, did you...
I had a computer die. My laptop died in the meantime. And I had also moved residences, and I just simply wasn't able to find it.
At some point...
The final draft I turned into.
And at some point, did you come to find out that Professor Tratos couldn't issue you a grade because he he couldn't review your final draft?
Did I find out he couldn't give me a final grade because he didn't review
Or
it?
that he wasn't going to issue a final grade because he didn't have your final draft?
Well, he did issue me a final grade, though.
But at some point, did you find out?
Passed that course.
Yeah, but you didn't pass until much later. I'm talking about as of September 2001. Did you find out that Professor Tratos could not give you a grade in the class because he did not have your final paper?
As of September? No, because I said, I have a rough draft of this. Do you want it? He goes, yeah, turn it in.
As of September?
I believe it was, yeah, because he wrote me like on, the paper was due July 15th or so, and then he finally wrote me this, we need another copy of your paper, like on September 7th. And then I wrote him back and said, all I have is this rough draft. Do you want me to turn it in? And he writes me back saying, yes, turn it in. And this is right around September 11th, 2001, so just to give you some context. But anyway, so I turned that in, and it's like I don't hear anything from him for a while, and the next thing I hear, which I believe was in October, was, we're starting this academic fraud investigation. No, we're not going to ask any of these students who said, who will say that they saw you turn it in. We're not going to look into that. We're just going to start this full-scale academic fraud investigation, which, by the way, you need to report to any state bar you subsequently apply to. And that was the next thing I heard from Mr. Tratos after he had told me, yeah, turn in that draft.
Does Exhibit 5 contain all of the emails between yourself and Professor Tratos regarding the paper?
I don't know.
Well, please review it.
Well, even if I reviewed it, I wouldn't know. Because this is something like, what is this, like 6 years ago now?
Okay, well let's talk about...
And you know.
Well, on September 7th, 2001, you wrote Professor Tratos an email, correct? That's Exhibit 5, page 1. Is that your email to Professor Tratos?
5, page 1, yeah.
And in that email, you write that you can't find a copy because of the paper because your motherboard fried, correct?
And because I'd moved residences.
Right. And that you only turned in a hard copy with your Social Security number on it?
With a note requesting that the paper not be used for an online posting. And a reason being that I was taking the bar exam in a week and that my paper hadn't been really up to the quality I would want it to be posted online.
And then you ask, let me know what I need to do at the bottom,
Yeah,
correct?
absolutely. You know, I was willing to do whatever to, you know,
Okay, well, in
sort
response
this
to that...
situation out.
Are we on page
I'm sorry, that was on page 1
1? Okay.
of Exhibit 5.
Okay.
And Exhibit 5, page 2, is this the email from Professor Tratos to you dated September 7, 2001?
That's an email from Mark to me.
And in it states, thank you for your responsive email and for the kind words. We have no papers that were turned in without a student name on them, at least of which we are aware. Perhaps you can help us out by providing us with some more clues. What was the topic? What was the paper's title? What was the total number of pages? Where did you do the paper? Do you have an e-copy? Is it on your laptop? Unfortunately, I have no choice than to assign it incomplete until we can track it down. Mark Tratos. That's what it states?
It appears that you just read those words correctly, yes.
Okay. So, did you read this email?
Yes.
And what was your understanding of what Professor Tratos was telling you in this email?
I was so confused because originally he goes, we need another copy of your paper, and then now it's like, well, we didn't ever get that paper that we referred to as another copy of which we need. So I don't.
So at some point, would it be fair to say that you understood he didn't have a copy of your paper to grade?
No, I would say that has never been my understanding.
So you think that as of September 7, 2001, he had your paper?
I'm not omniscient. I know I turned the paper in. Whether someone came and, a fairy came and flew away with it, I don't know, but I know I turned the paper in.
And then you wrote back to Professor Tratos, it's page 3, Exhibit 5, September 7, 2001. And is that your email to Professor Tratos?
Yeah.
Okay. And in it you describe the name of the paper, and then you request whether or not the paper is worth 15% or you could take the class pass-fail instead, correct?
Yeah.
And then
Because, whatever.
Professor Tratos writes back, page 4, Zach, thank you for the quick reply. Sorry you were misinformed. The paper represents 40% of the grade. We received everyone else's papers. Please try to find it on your laptop.
Which is interesting because he asked for Jessica Wolf's paper again as well. So that would imply to me that he hadn't, in fact, received everyone's papers. Yeah.
So would you agree that
But then he said he wanted another copy of it, so I'm confused,
So would you agree that the paper was worth 40% of your grade?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's worth whatever he wants it to be worth, no matter what he said. Or no matter how confused, the rest of the class was about whether it was worth 15 or 40 or... And there was 2 people teaching this class, too. They were kind of rotating, 2 adjuncts were rotating.
And then on page 5 of Exhibit 5, is that an email from you to Professor Tratos of September 10th, 2001?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. And at this point, you were unable to find a copy of the final paper that you submitted, correct?
This is a long time ago, but yeah, I think that's the case.
Okay. And then you write, second paragraph, further, no digital copy was to be turned in by me, as I had already made clear my wishes that my paper not be added to the firm class's website. I could think of no other reason for a professor to request a digital copy of a paper. Right? You wrote that?
Yeah.
So, did you believe that a digital copy was not necessary to turn in?
Like I mentioned earlier, there was confusion amongst my peers in the class as to whether or not a digital copy was either being required or requested, or whether anybody had even heard of that to begin with. Or
Mr. Coughlin,
my belief was I'm not sure.
Mr. Coughlin, in your opinion, whose fault was it that Professor Tratos didn't have your final paper?
Well, I know I turned the paper in, beyond that, it's not really my place to say whose fault it is, you know.
Well, certainly you have an opinion about it.
My opinion is that I don't know whose fault it is. You know? And I don't know that you always have to find fault and everything and make everything a zero-sum game like some people like to do.
When you wrote the sentence, of course, I suppose it would be prudent for all students to keep copies of all assignments that are to be turned in. However, I would imagine that I would have been able to present such a copy had I been asked to sometimes sooner than a full 4 days after grades were to be posted. So what was the purpose of that statement?
I don't understand your question.
So was it